Well, former Toronto Mayor David Crombie is resigning as head of Ontario's Greenbelt Council. Crombie, who is also a former federal cabinet minister in the Mulroney government, is quitting over proposed rules for environmental protection. Now, Crombie objects to measures contained in the Ford government's omnibus budget bill. It was tabled last month. And the budget mainly does focus on pandemic recovery, but it does also contain measures on several other issues, including the environment. And with that, we're now joined by David Crombie, as we said, former federal cabinet minister, as well as former mayor of Toronto. Mr. Crombie, thank you for joining us today.
Nice to see you, Michael.
Listen, to begin our discussion, I'm hoping you can explain to people why you have decided to resign. Of course, many people, they have been preoccupied, understandably, with COVID-19. We're having this conversation about what's happening in Ontario right across the country. So tell us a bit more about the Greenbelt in Ontario and what led you to submit your resignation.
The Greenbelt in Ontario is a very vast area surrounding the Greater Toronto Area and even beyond the Greater Toronto Area. It was established over about 15 years ago, and it has a council that advises the Minister of Municipal Affairs and Housing and other ministers on things that should or should not be done. And we've been doing that now for some time. But recently, the government brought in the Ford administration brought in a section, as you pointed out, a section of their budget bill, which dealt with with conservation, and in particular the role and jurisdiction and powers of the conservation authorities. The council opposed what it was doing and sent letters to the minister explaining why they think that the Schedule 6, which dealt with these matters, should be taken out of the bill, out of the budget bill. This week, there were committee hearings, and there were even more amendments brought forward that severely restricts the conservation authorities and their work. What it means in practical terms is this: watershed planning is that watershed planning and conservation authorities and public debate are the three major things that are required for the Greenbelt and indeed environmental and land use planning across the province. These are severely, affected by the government's actions this week. It has now been adopted through the government's majority in committee and goes for third reading tomorrow. And at that time, it seemed inappropriate for me to stay where I was. It's not so much that they didn't take advice. There's many times before where they've not taken our advice. But this is on a matter which is fundamental to the future of environmental stewardship in the province of Ontario.
Okay, let me build on that, though, because to my understanding, to add to what you just said, a minister under these new rules would have the power to override local planning, override zoning rules. But to hear from the government, and please correct me if I'm wrong here, they make the argument that they're not actually talking about the Greenbelt, but land outside of it. So why should people in Ontario care?
Oh, because the Greenbelt itself is operated through watershed planning. It's called integrated watershed planning, and it goes beyond municipal and city and regional boundaries and deals in natural boundaries. The legislation that's been brought forward shrinks that opportunity. So you're back to simply municipal boundaries. And if you're dealing with things like water, you're dealing with water quality, water quantity, wetlands, all of those things, they are connected, not just within the Greenbelt, they're connected to the province as well.
Now, traditionally, against arguments like yours of protection, there are arguments about jobs, and certainly in the age of COVID-19, and a post-pandemic recovery, we hear things like development is going to be a key part of that. What would you say to those imperatives, to those arguments that there is a need to create jobs and land should be developed if it's not in the Greenbelt?
Oh no, there's lots of land to develop. There's no doubt about that. It's not as if there's land in short supply, so that's not a problem. And it's important to understand that if they want to develop an economy after COVID, it is going to be one which is going to be very much dependent on our ability to seek a greener economy, one which deals with jobs that are going to be related to a new kind of prosperity. It's absolutely wrong to assume that simply because you want to build the old way, the only way to do it is to be able to knock out wetlands and not care about the environment. So it's not a good argument. It's one that's being used, but it's not right.
Okay. Here you are, you're resigning, and we need to point out that 6 other members of this council, they too are now stepping down. So where do your concerns go from here? What would you like to see happen here? Who should be taking up the mantle if you are stepping down and others are following?
Oh, well, there's a large number of organizations and people, the municipal associations of Ontario, big city councils, many organizations are in the same position as we are in opposing this legislation. So what I will do, I think other members of the council will do, but joined by thousands of other people and organizations, we're going to continue to struggle against this legislation and any bad projects that come as a result of it.
David Crombie, really nice of you to join us today. Thank you for this.
Thank you.